In the 1st century before the Common Era, Julius Caesar crossed the Channel into an island he did not yet control. What he found there unsettled him enough to write it down. The inhabitants, he reported, stained their entire bodies with a dark blue pigment that made them terrifying in battle. That pigment came from a plant called Woad. The Romans called these blue-stained people Picti, the painted ones. And here is where the story takes an unexpected turn. The Celtic word for paint was brith. Some scholars believe the word Britannia, the name the Romans gave the island, derives directly from that root. A painted land, named, possibly, after the plant that colored its people. This is Isatis tinctoria, and this is the story of a plant that history slowly forgot. For thousands of years, Woad was the primary source of blue dye across the entire continent of Europe. There was no real alternative. If you wanted blue cloth, blue pigment, blue thread, you needed Woad. If you could not get it, you did not have blue. That is how fundamental this plant was to everyday life. And it was not only a dye. Look at your jeans. Look at any blue fabric in your house. That color comes from a chemical called indigotin. Today, nearly all of it is synthetic, derived from petroleum. But for most of recorded history, every piece of blue cloth in Europe owed its color to woad leaves. The Lindisfarne Gospels, one of the most important illustrated manuscripts in Western history, painted around 720, used woad-based pigment for its blue paint. The Hunt of the Unicorn tapestries, woven around 1495, used woad for the deep blue that has outlasted every other color in the weave. And it is worth pausing on that. The blue is the color that survived. 5 centuries later, the woad blue remains. The Vikings operated woad dye shops. Archaeologists excavated one in York, dated to the 10th century. For much of European history, woad was not simply a plant, it was a strategic resource, and strategic resources tend to build fortunes. In medieval southern France, in the triangle between Toulouse, Albi, and Carcassonne, a region called the Lauragais, woad production became an industry so profitable that one writer described it as the happiest and richest region in all of Europe. That wealth was not exaggerated. The woad merchants of Toulouse built mansions that still stand today. Stone palaces, financed entirely by a plant that turned leaves into blue. In Germany, the story was remarkably similar. One group of woad merchants became so wealthy, they funded the founding of an entire university, the University of Erfurt. It still exists today, built on the profits of a plant most people have never been told about. 5 Thuringian towns were granted their own royal charters, specifically because of the woad trade. An entire regional economy built around a single botanical species. But something else was happening in European culture that made Woad even more valuable. In the 11th century, blue underwent a transformation. The Greeks and Romans had associated it with death and barbarians, and they avoided it. As the cult of the Virgin Mary grew across Christendom, Mary began to be depicted wearing a deep blue cloak. Royal dynasties dropped red banners and adopted blue ones. Blue stained glass filled cathedrals. Suddenly, blue was the color of heaven. And the people who controlled the supply of blue became the most powerful merchants on the continent. Then in 1498, Vasco da Gama found the sea route to India, and everything shifted. Tropical indigo, a plant from the genus Indigofera, could now be shipped directly to European ports. It contained the same chemical as woad, indigotin, but in far higher concentrations, perhaps 30 times more pigment per harvest. It was stronger, it was cheaper, and it threatened to dismantle every woad-growing economy in Europe. Here is the timeline that tells the story. In 1577, the German imperial diet officially banned the use of indigo. Their language was extraordinary. They called it a pernicious, deceitful, and corrosive substance. They called it the devil's dye. That ban was repeated in 1594 and again in 1603. But it was France that went furthest. In 1609, King Henry IV issued a royal edict making the use of tropical indigo punishable by death. His recorded words called it the false and pernicious Indian drug. It is worth sitting with that for a moment. A European king made it a capital offense to use a plant, not because it was dangerous, not because it was poisonous, but because it threatened the profits of a domestic industry. The woad economy was so deeply embedded in the political structure of medieval Europe that governments were willing to execute people to protect it, but they lost. The economics were impossible to ignore. Protectionist laws could not hold back a product that was orders of magnitude more efficient. By the 17th century, woad's dominance was broken. By the 19th century, it was fading. And then, in 1897, the German chemical company BASF developed a way to synthesize indigo entirely in a laboratory. No plant was required at all. That ended both woad and tropical indigo as commercial crops. The last commercial woad harvest in Britain took place in 1932 in Lincolnshire. After thousands of years of continuous cultivation, a plant that had shaped trade, politics, art, and possibly the name of the country itself was quietly pulled from the soil. But the story of woad did not end when Europe abandoned it. On the other side of the world, it had a completely different life. In China, woad root has a name, banlangen. It has been used in traditional Chinese medicine for thousands of years to treat infections, fevers, and respiratory illness. When the SARS outbreak reached China in 2003, banlangen was one of 8 medicines officially recommended by the Chinese government for treatment. Modern research has begun to support what Chinese physicians knew empirically. The roots of Isatis tinctoria contain compounds with documented antiviral, antibacterial, and anti-inflammatory properties. The plant's Latin name quietly encodes this dual identity. Isatis, from the Greek, relates to its use in healing wounds. Tinctoria means dye-giving, healing and color, both written into its scientific name, both largely forgotten in the West. Now let me give you the identification brief so you can recognize this plant if you encounter it. WOAD is a biennial, meaning it completes its life cycle over 2 years. In its first year, it produces a rosette of blue-green leaves close to the ground. These are the leaves you would harvest for dye. In the second year, it sends up a tall, flowering stalk, sometimes reaching 1.5 meters, topped with clusters of small, bright yellow flowers. The flowers are followed by distinctive hanging seed pods, dark and flattened, shaped almost like small tongues. It belongs to the Brassicaceae family, the same family as cabbage, mustard, and broccoli. It is not toxic. It grows readily in temperate climates across Europe, including Britain. It tolerates poor soils. It self-seeds aggressively, which is why several American states have classified it as a noxious weed. In the United States, a plant that shaped European civilization is legally categorized as an invasive pest. You can grow this plant It was never banned in Europe. Seeds are available from heritage seed companies and specialist suppliers. It grows from seed in ordinary garden soil. It prefers full sun and well-drained conditions. Harvest the first-year leaves in summer. The process of extracting blue pigment is ancient and well documented. You crush the leaves, form them into balls, ferment the balls, and extract the indigo through an alkaline reduction. The blue you produce is chemically identical to the blue that colored the Lindisfarne Gospels, the same blue that built the mansions of Toulouse, the same blue that a French king was willing to kill to protect, and it grows in an ordinary garden. There is something quietly powerful about growing a plant like this. Every Woad plant is a piece of recovered history. Every blue thread you dye from it is a connection to thousands of years of human culture. The Glastonbury connection still echoes in the name. Glastonbury, from the Celtic Glastum, may literally mean the place where Woad grows, a town named after a plant that almost nobody in Britain can identify today. Knowledge never disappeared. It was only buried, and sometimes all it takes is one plant to uncover it again. If you enjoyed rediscovering this forgotten plant, consider subscribing to The Quiet Botanist. There are many more stories hidden beneath the soil. The next story is already waiting. There is a flower the Celtic Druids considered so sacred they ranked it alongside mistletoe. Centuries later, modern chemists extracted a compound from it and created the most widely consumed medicine in human history, aspirin. But the whole plant does something the isolated chemical does not. That story is coming soon.